At 44 Licking Pike in Wilder, Kentucky, sits a disheveled building that's touted as the most haunted nightclub in America. The sign at the entrance warns patrons that the management is not responsible for the actions of ghosts or spirits on the premises. Tales of murder, organized crime, hauntings, and demonic possessions flow like the waters of the Licking River. Many of the strange occurrences are centered around a well. Could it be a portal to the depths of hell, or is it simply just a hole in the ground? Come take a spin around the dance floor to the anniversary waltz, or sit in the shadows of Carl's apartment and hear what we discovered when we investigated the infamous Bobby Mackey's Music World. Welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I'm Shelley Pruitt, and these are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Mr. Ryan Roberts.
What up, what
Tonight,
up?
you guys,
What's
we are going
happening,
to be
y'all?
talking to you about one that if you are a paranormal junkie like we are, you have definitely heard of Bobby Mackey's Music World. And the stories about Bobby Mackey's, now a lot of you have seen the episode on Ghost Adventures about what they discovered whenever they went to Bobby Mackey's Music World. Well, Ryan and I have investigated there twice, and we thought we really have to talk about this because we came to slightly different conclusions. And of
Absolutely.
course, our Mr. Encyclopedia Ryan has delved into some of the more interesting parts of the story that may or may not have been left out and is going to kind of dispel a few of the incorrect stories that seem to be floating around about Bobby Mackey's. So, Blake, you've heard of Bobby Mackey's, of course,
Oh my
right?
gosh, yes. Hello. I mean, like you just said, if you're a paranormal junkie or anything in the paranormal that loves hauntings, ghosts, spirits, you know about Bobby Mackey's Music World. It's infamous in its own right. So, but I'm excited to hear what Ryan has to tell us about what his encyclopedia brain picked up for us.
And I got to tell you, Ryan always comes up with something that I didn't know, and I was there. So, so Ryan, you want to kind of start off and tell us a little something if they don't know about Bobby Mackey's?
Yeah. So, like you were saying, if you are into the paranormal in any way, shape, or form, you have heard of Bobby Mackey's Music World. I mean, it was so infamous enough that Ghost Adventures did their very first episode they ever did on Travel Channel about Bobby Mackey's Music World. They've been back a second time, and I think Nick Groff himself has returned again. And there have been several paranormal shows that have gone in there to film. Now, there is obviously something happening at Bobby Mackey's. That is undeniable. Me and Shelley have been there twice. We have seen it firsthand. There's something going on there. But there's a lot of lore and legend surrounding this place. And when you have a place that's as active as Bobby Mackey's, you're going to have a lot of lore and legend surrounding it. And sometimes it's kind of hard to pick out what is and what isn't true. Now, with Bobby Mackey's, it's a little bit of both. But the nice thing about it is, like I said, there is definitely something going on there. but as we'll get into later, it might be a little bit something different than what people actually initially think is going on there. But Bobby Mackey's, where it sits now, originally there was a house there, and a man built a house there, and I cannot remember his name to save my life because we were told this when we went to Bobby Mackey's. And the structure where the infamous well room is, where it's supposed to be the portal to hell, quote unquote, the structure that's around that is part of the old house. And the man sold the house back in the day, and the legend says that there was a slaughterhouse that was built there in the 1850s. And in the slaughterhouse, the blood would go down the well and out into the Licking River. And as part of it being a slaughterhouse, there was a lot of blood, there was a lot of guts, there was a lot of death because they were slaughtering animals. And the slaughterhouse eventually closes in 1890. But the slaughterhouse became a gathering place, supposedly, for a local satanic cult as it was closed in the 1890s. Now, this is what the legend and lore says. And this comes into play later on when you have one of the most infamous stories from Bobby Mackey's, the murder of Pearl Bryan. Now, everyone has heard the story about Pearl Bryan's head being her being absolutely decapitated and her head being thrown down the well in a satanic ritual that Scott Jackson and Alonzo Walling performed. However, upon my research, I have found the actual story of what happened with Pearl Bryan. Now, Pearl Bryan was from Greencastle, Indiana. She was the youngest of 12 children, and she was the daughter of a wealthy farmer. She graduated from high school in 1892, and she was a very popular woman in her area. And in 1896, her cousin introduced her to a guy named Scott Jackson. And Scott Jackson was a student at the Ohio Dental College in Cincinnati. And her cousin had become good friends with him. And, he just introduced Pearl Bryan, and they became lovers, Pearl Bryan and Scott Jackson. Now, according to legend, Scott Jackson was a member of this satanic cult that was in Bobby Mackey's music world at the time. And they're dating for a while. And in 1896, at 22 years old, Pearl Bryan becomes pregnant.
Scandalous.
Mm-hmm. And if you know anything about that time period, if you were a young woman, you weren't married, you didn't want that getting out. And she didn't want to disappoint her parents. And she told her cousin that she was pregnant, and her cousin told Jackson. And Jackson made arrangements for Pearl to come to Cincinnati and get an abortion. So Pearl doesn't tell her parents, and Pearl goes to Cincinnati. As a matter of fact, she tells her parents that she is going to Indianapolis on February the 1st. Not first.
First. February the 1st.
February
Words
the 1st,
are hard, man. We get it.
So February the 1st, 1896, she tells her family, hey, I'm going to Indianapolis. I'll be back. And her parents were like, okay, that's fine, whatever. And she actually goes to Cincinnati instead. And she goes to meet Scott Jackson and his roommate, Alonzo Walling, in Cincinnati. And when she goes to Cincinnati, Jackson and Walling decide to perform the abortion themselves with their dental tools.
Oh,
which,
God.
That is stupid. Extremely stupid. That is a very delicate procedure, and you're going to need somebody who was a professional. But in order to keep things hush-hush, I guess these two geniuses decided that they were going to perform this abortion with their dental tools. And obviously, that didn't work. So you have a bloody, screaming, sobbing woman that has, essentially been mangled at this point because they tried to perform a botched abortion. So they freaked out, and they decide, we're going to go into the wilderness of northern Kentucky. And they don't know what they're going to do with her yet, but they got to get out of wherever they are. So they hop a wagon, and they go to Fort Thomas, Kentucky, which is right over the border. Now, if you know anything about Licking Pike and the Licking River and where Bobby Mackey sits, it's like literally 5 minutes from Cincinnati. You go right across into the Kentucky border and you're right over in Kentucky. Now, next to there is this place called Fort Jackson. It's another town that is very close to Bobby Mackey's. Fort Thomas. And once again, they hop a wagon and they go out there. Now, it's a secluded spot, but it is actually a few miles from Bobby Mackey's. The murder never occurred in the building. It occurred miles away. The only evidence that we have that they were even at the building was the stagecoach driver stopped in front of the old building, and because he heard a woman screaming in the back of the stagecoach. And as a matter of fact, I believe it was Walling that got out and told him to keep driving and held him at gunpoint and told him to make him to drive. So he drives them out to this I can't even talk. What the hell is wrong with me? They drive them out to this secluded spot. So Jackson and Walling decide they're going to murder Pearl Bryan.
What else are they going to do with her?
Yeah. They have no,
because now she either has to go to a hospital
mm-hmm.
and have medical treatment, and then the secret's out, and more than likely they would face some kind of charges for doing that to her.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you know, the shame that they have to do something with her. Now they have to make a decision,
mm-hmm.
and the decision is, rather than bring shame on themselves, let's just get rid of her.
Let's try to cover this up as best as we possibly can. So once again, they used their dental instruments, and they used it to decapitate Pearl Bryan. And the doctor that did Pearl Bryan's autopsy said it was a clean cut and she was still alive at the time of severance. Her body was found 2 miles from the slaughterhouse / Bobby Mackey's. And the legend is that they severed Pearl's head, and they used Pearl's head for a satanic ritual in the basement of the slaughterhouse, and then threw the head down the well. Well, that's not really what happened.
So first of all,
why is it always a satanic?
Yeah, why is there always satanic cult?
Yeah.
Why is it always satanic ritual? I mean, come on now.
Yeah,
it's the spookiest possible thing, and so people will come up with that, which I'll actually get to that. Excuse me, I'll get to that later about why the satanic ritual.
If you want a reason to describe why somebody did something so horrible, it's got to be the devil was in them, because no sane, reasonable, God-fearing person would ever do this. But first of all, Bobby Mackey's was never a slaughterhouse. The slaughterhouse actually sat right up the road.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a little bit of misinformation that's been put out there. Bobby Mackey's was never, in any of the research I found, ever a slaughterhouse. And there is a paranormal team that is dedicated to taking groups through Bobby Mackey's. They basically, we got to go, fortunately, and they didn't tag after us, but they let us in. They stay on the property the entire time. Lady sat in her car the whole time and gave us free roam of the building. She was just basically there to lock it up and open it up and close everything down. And second of all, there's something very interesting about the Licking River. It is a north flowing river. It flows the opposite direction that most rivers flow. So that is something interesting about that river. Now, also right behind Bobby Mackey's, between the river and Bobby Mackey's, train tracks. Trains come through there and rumble that building all the time. So what do we have? We've got trains, constant energy. We've got flowing water. Our theories about water. So allegedly Pearl's head was tossed down the well, and that was in an effort to keep her from being identified when they tossed her body.
And another reason that we know that is not true as far as the slaughterhouse and her head being tossed down the well, we know that at the time, that building was not a slaughterhouse. It was a whiskey distillery. And the well they had was used to bring water up from the Licking River. As a matter of fact, there are 3 wells in the bottom of Bobby Mackey's. And you walk around, you can kind of see on the corners of some of the buildings where like the bricking around the outside of a well is.
The masonry that builds it up,
Yes, exactly. Bricking.
But it's okay. We knew what you meant, because it's bricks circled around. We're with you. We're with you. Carry on with your bad stuff.
So we know that it was a whiskey distillery, and they were using that well to pull water up from the Licking River. and that there is no way they could have got inside the whiskey distillery to go in there and throw a head anywhere.
Because who was that run by?
Well, not quite yet. We'll get there.
Because that's where my encounter happens.
Oh yes. So Jackson and Walling are arrested in 1897 and tried for the murder of Pearl Bryan. Walling testified that it was Jackson who had the idea to cut the head off of Pearl's body. He said that Jackson's idea was to cut her body up into smaller pieces and toss it in the sewers of Cincinnati. But they never got around to doing that for one reason or another. I'm not sure why. As a matter of fact, locks of Pearl's hair were found in a suitcase in Jackson's room. And
so
they
you
were
wondered
sentenced.
How they transported her? That's how they did it.
There you
Shoved
go.
her in a suitcase.
They were sentenced to death, and both were given the death penalty, but they were given the option of a life sentence if they would reveal the location of Pearl Bryan's head, and both actually refused to say what happened to her head. So to this day, we have no idea what happened
and
to her.
Pearl Bryant's head was not recovered in
Never
that
has
well.
been recovered.
It was searched from what we understand, and it was not recovered. But
Not
again,
at all.
some well, deep dark well, who knows decomposition? Who would have known if they would have found it or not? But
I mean, there's several rivers in the area. There's creeks, there's cisterns at the time too. I mean, it could have gone into any body of water. And two, think about it, it's in the middle of the wilderness. Animal could have taken it, eaten it, but they still refused to ever say whatever happened to her head. But they were hung behind the courthouse on March the 21st, 1897. And Jackson and Walling swore they would haunt the area before they were hung. And kind of poetic justice for these two. Their hanging was botched, and it took them 4 minutes to die.
Yep.
So they hung up there for quite some time. Now,
damn, that's
too bad guys, too bad ends.
That's
got everything that they absolutely deserved.
Yeah, that's traumatic as hell right there.
So for what we've found, Alonzo, Scott Jackson, and Pearl, they were all real people. And this is actually an accurate story. Was her head actually put down the well? It was never recovered there. And as far as we know, Bobby Mackey's, as it sits today, was never a slaughterhouse. So could she have been killed in a slaughterhouse? Yes, there was one that used to sit right up the road from Bobby Mackey's, not even a half a mile is where it used to be, and across
but it wasn't
the
on
street.
The property.
But it was not on that property. But it's close.
Very close.
We think that's where that rumor probably came from.
Absolutely. Now, the area sits kind of dormant for a while. The old whiskey distillery is shut down. It's just sitting there. But in the 1920s, it becomes a speakeasy and a gambling hall that was built on top of the old distillery. And they used the well to sneak liquor up from the river and to get it out whenever the feds showed up and tried to raid. And there were several unsolved murders committed there, but the bodies were taken off site because they didn't want to draw any
unnecessary attention to it. Yeah,
exactly. And
now, can we say who it was run by?
It's not quite there yet, as a matter of fact. So it becomes the Bluegrass Inn in 1933, and then it's bought by a man named Buck Brady and becomes the Primrose, and it was a tavern and a casino once again. And at this point, the mob comes in.
The mob. The mob.
Now, they wanted a piece.
I am fascinated with
experience.
Oh, yes.
I have a great experience. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm a witness to it because I saw it happen, and it was insane. Now, the mob wanted a piece, and they wanted to try to become partners with Buck, and he wouldn't go for it. So they tried to buy him out, and he wouldn't go for it. Now, if you know anything about the mob, you don't refuse the mob. The mob's going to get what they want eventually.
Yeah, not a good idea.
As Buck refused to sell, the place began to be vandalized, and Buck and people in the parking lot were getting threatened, and all kinds of weird stuff was happening. So Buck became involved in a shooting in 1946. I love
how it was like he became involved. Suddenly he was just, suddenly I guess I'll get involved.
He was just like, he was tired of the mob messing with him. So he actually gets into a argument and a shooting, and he gets arrested because they said he committed attempted murder on a member of the mob. And Buck, when he gets out, he just gets tired of dealing with this. He's like, they keep coming up here. They keep messing with me. I'm going to sell. So Buck does sell to the mob. And the Cleveland Syndicate buys it, and it becomes the Latin Quarter. So the mob rebranded the club the Latin Quarter in 1947, and it was the Latin Quarter from 1947 to 1961. And the owner of it was a small-time gangster, and he was arrested and released several times for illegal gambling charges. Now, at the time, everybody knew it was a casino, but it was still illegal to gamble. But, he gets in and out all the time because they might have had some people up in the higher ups. I'm not going to say.
So it was rumored that the mayor
Mm-hmm.
would come and gamble there, which is why they
Mm-hmm.
always seem to skate on these charges. That
Absolutely.
the mayor would gamble there, that members of the city council that the local sheriff would gamble there.
Mm-hmm.
It was rumored that if you were anybody in town of any influence, you could come and gamble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you were seen there.
As a matter of fact, Carl Lawson's apartment that is above Bobby Mackey's was where the high rollers used to go gamble. So if you didn't want to be seen, that's where you went.
Yeah.
Now, during this time, the rumor and innuendo and all the speculation is, and the lore and legend is, the story of Johanna. And if you know anything about Bobby Mackey's, you know about Johanna. Now, the story goes that Johanna was allegedly the daughter of one of the owners of the Latin Quarter. She fell in love with a singer named Robert Randall Mackey, and she became pregnant with his child.
Named Robert Randall.
Robert Randall Mickey. His last name was Mickey. I'm sorry.
Mickey. Right.
Yeah, Robert Randall Mickey. And she became pregnant, and the father did not approve and had him killed. So Johanna was distraught. So she poisoned her father, and then she poisoned herself in one of the basement dressing rooms and didn't survive. Her dad survived, but she didn't. So that's the story of Johanna. But we'll get into it a little bit later. There's a few things about Johanna that just don't really add up. So
and Bobby Mackey wrote a song,
Mm-hmm.
very famous song about Johanna.
Absolutely.
And that is his signature song that he generally closes all of his sets with is
Mm-hmm.
Johanna. And of course, but quick little thing. Robert Randall
Mm-hmm.
was the crooner that allegedly got Johanna pregnant. Okay, that she fell in love with. And funny story about Bobby Mackey. When he was born, his mother named him Randy Mackey. And one day later, she suddenly changes her mind and she names him Robert Randall Mackey. And he went by Bobby, which just happens to be the name of Johanna's ill-fated lover. So, do we think that perhaps there might be a little bit of a publicity thing going on here, that the crooner's name just happened to be Robert Randall, and Bobby Mackey happens to have made a lot of money off this song named Johanna? You decide. Go ahead, Ryan. Tell what else we know about Johanna.
Which we'll get to that later when we're kind of going into the real story a little bit, because Carl Lawson comes into the Johanna story, and we got to talk about Carl here in a little bit. But as we go along and this whole Latin Quarter business is behind us, it becomes the Hard Rock Cafe in the 1970s, and it was shut down after several shootings. Not the Hard Rock Cafe, but a Hard Rock Cafe. And
Shout
after
out.
it shut down, say what?
He said shout out.
Worked for them for 8 years.
So after that, Bobby Mackey buys the club in 1978, and he had gotten a little bit of success, and so he wanted to buy a place. He was tired of touring, and he wanted to buy a place. He's like, look, people are going to know where I'm going to be at every weekend. They can come see me. So he buys it, and the club stays packed all the time in the 80s. Now, in comes Carl Lawson. Carl was a local guy, and he came and told Bobby that he wanted to be a handyman at the club, and he really wanted to work there. And Bobby said, sure, and let him live in the apartment upstairs. Now, Carl began to have a lot of strange experiences when he started living at Bobby Mackey's. Carl would claim that he would see and hear things in the club all the time. And Now, Carl is an interesting character. I think the man definitely had things happen to him, but I think he was a bit of a tormented soul.
Very tormented soul.
He had a reputation as a heavy drinker, and
heavy smoker, heavy drinker,
and people in town thought he was crazy. They would say he was kind of he was kind of off
they
his
would say he
rocker
was
a
the
little bit.
nicest guy, but he was a little off.
And Carl would come and start telling these stories about things that happened to him in Bobby Mackey's music world. And one day, Bobby comes in, and Carl is in the basement, and Carl is digging up the floor where the well room is now. Now, Carl didn't know anything about the well and the floor or anything like that. And Bobby's like, hey, man, what the hell are you doing? Why are you digging up my floor? And Carl starts telling the story about how he saw this beautiful woman named Johanna. And Johanna told him her story and told him where to dig. And Carl claimed that he found a diary that outlined all of Johanna's story, but no one but Carl ever saw the diary.
If I found something like that, I'd be coming to y'all going, dude, look what I found.
Check this out.
Read this. But Carl was digging like a madman and would not stop. And Bobby Mackey described it as he could not stop, that he dug and dug and dug until he unearthed this well. Now, Carl was also known that whenever he stayed at Bobby Mackey's, he was known to have, whenever he'd go to bed, he actually, on the outside of his door that's still there, there's an American flag and these words that say, go away, on the door. And he would close the door and he would barricade himself in the room. And he also, Carl would sleep with a shotgun for protection. Now, I don't know about you, but I ain't never seen a shotgun work on a ghost. But hey, whatever makes you feel better, Carl.
That's like the most extreme security blanket I've ever heard of. But
yeah, but he was known to have slept with a shotgun.
He did. He slept right by the side of his bed all the time. Now, things started going real haywire when Carl pulled up the floorboards on the well, and they say that he sprinkled holy water in the well, and people started to see some of the things that Carl claimed was happening.
We sure that didn't have no LSD in it? Because you sprinkle something in my water and I start seeing things, I'm calling the cops.
So Carl would claim he would close up at night and turn off the lights and lock the doors, and he would come back downstairs and the doors and lights were on. Now, several bartenders have experienced this when they worked there. He also claimed that the jukebox would come on in the middle of the night unplugged and play the anniversary waltz. And that's also been corroborated by several paranormal investigators who have been there that have had the thing come on by itself and it's not been plugged into the wall. Other bartenders, other bar patrons have had that happen as well.
And one of the investigators that had actually taken us through the second, it was the lady that had been there a second time. She was going in to close up, and we said, would you like us to walk through with you so you don't have to walk through in the dark by yourself? I'm like, we turned off these lights, and these lights. She says, oh, no, I've got it. And I'm like, you're okay with walking down to the far end, turn off those lights, and walking all the way back in the dark? She goes, I do it all the time. She goes, it only freaks me out whenever the jukebox comes on. Yeah. And I'm like, well, now I must walk through with you while you close just in case that happens. And I did too. I mean, me and Ryan, we walked right behind her the whole way through.
Because I'm going to tell you something, like we'll get to later. Now, I may be dispelling some of the lore and legend around Bobby Mackey's right now, but there is definitely something going on with that place, and I wouldn't want to close that place up by myself at night. There is there's something going on. So Carl actually gets so tormented and has so many things happen to him. He gets an exorcism in 1991. And if you ever go online, you can go online and look at it. It is a very intense video. I mean, if you're into that sort of thing, I recommend it, but it's actually kind of hard to watch because I feel real sorry for Carl. I think that, so kind of backing up a little bit, in doing research on the paranormal, you start to notice a pattern, and you start to realize that a lot of times paranormal really begins to affect people who are marginalized and marginalized members of society. I believe that Carl definitely had some mental problems, but I don't think that everything that happened to Carl was a result of his mental problem. I think that whatever was there and whatever is there could have exploited Carl's mental issues to make things worse for Carl.
Well, you know what I found absolutely distasteful? And there are very few Catholic priests because the whole thing of exorcisms is very shrouded in mystery. And it's not something that they just let people attend. And the fact that there was a bishop that was allowing Carl's exorcism to be filmed, I find that quite distasteful. You're taking someone at a very vulnerable moment and you're exploiting it. I have seen it and I turned it off because I didn't want it. It's like Ron said, it's very difficult to watch. You're seeing this man struggling. You are hearing him scream, and these are screams of anguish, and they will make your blood run cold and your hair stand on end, and it will give you the chills. And in that moment that whatever's happening to him is painful, whether it's mentally painful, physically painful, or spiritually painful. You are hearing every bit of his pain. And I personally found it very distasteful. I mean, some people are like, oh, we have to know, we have to research, we want to see. I don't want to see. That is not something at a person's most vulnerable moment that you should exploit. That's just my opinion. I found it a bit distasteful.
Yeah, I agree to that.
Yeah. I mean that man was extremely vulnerable and had a lot going on, and yeah, I can't. I mean, go watch it if you want to, but it's very tough. Now, Carl ends up dying in January of 2012, but he got his story told on Ghost Adventures when they first went, and I think I believe he was on the second episode too, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. It's been a while since I've watched it, but let's kind of rewind a little bit and talk about how a lot of locals don't remember hearing anything about occult practices until Carl started talking about it in the 70s.
There had been no documented cult activity in the area. Also, can we go ahead and say that there was no documentation of anyone ever named Johanna?
No, because exactly. So we talked about the Johanna being the daughter of the owner of the Latin Quarter, and the Latin Quarter ran from 1957 to 1961. And it was actually, like I said, it was owned by the Cleveland Syndicate, but the two main owners, one was a guy named Mo Davitz, and he was the head, and he only had one daughter. Her name was Suzanne. And the other mobster's name was Red Masterson, and he also had a daughter, but her name was not Johanna. The only record they have of a Johanna in the area was a woman named Johanna who committed suicide by poison in 1914. And that was in Covington, Kentucky, which is just up the road. But the Johanna in the club allegedly committed suicide in the 50s by poisoning. And another thing you have to take note of is Johanna was supposedly a showgirl, and her dad owned the Latin Quarter. Now, if you know anything about, I am fascinated with the mafia. I will read anything, gangsters and all that stuff. I love reading about. Now, the mafia does not bring their family into their business.
That's right. The daddy is not going to let his precious baby girl up there on that stage to entertain the wily gentlemen who've been drinking and carousing.
No, not at all.
Not going to happen.
No. They are not going to bring, they're not going to, I mean, you think your dad's protective? Mafia dads are very, 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 very
don't look
protective.
Don't look at a mafia daughter wrong. You're likely to be sleeping with the fishes or end up with a horse head in your bed.
Your damn head might go down that well.
That's right.
So,
that's right. So the idea that she could have been a showgirl whose father ran the joint, not going to happen.
No, not going to happen. Now, but the question is what, and this is a question that I still have to this day, and I've been there twice. What made Carl dig in that particular spot and presented itself as a woman to Carl? I don't know.
And allegedly he knew what he was digging for.
Yes.
He knew what he was digging for when he began to dig. So how could he have possibly known that under a rotting floor in the middle of a basement is a well? And how could he have known the exact spot to dig? Because whenever you see the pictures of this well that we have, you can tell where the floorboards, they haven't fixed them. They've left them torn up. There it is. That is how Carl dug it out. How you see it is how Carl dug it up. the torn pieces of floorboard, everything like that. Now, I will tell you that well at Bobby Mackey's has been filled in, and that is for the safety of the idiots that like to go in and say, hey, let's go jump in the well. You dummy. Did you not learn anything from baby Jessica? You don't jump in the well. They ended up having to fill it in. Okay. So that well actually has been filled in because people were trying to get down in it, which during our investigation, there was someone who thought it would be funny to get into that well area and hide underneath those boards and decided to jump scare someone, and therefore he was removed.
Yeah.
Like it's just what look, just one paranormal 101 do's and don'ts. When you're going on a paranormal investigation, don't do jump scares.
Don't piss off Shelly.
No.
That's number one.
Don't piss off Shelly, but just don't do freaking jump scares.
Shelly is very patient when she's leading a paranormal investigation, but I did see Shelly got not so patient. And I've seen that at Bobby Mackey's. Now, so that in a nutshell is the history of Bobby Mackey's and the lore and legend. And that's what I was able to find in my research. And if you go there, they'll tell you some of those things, but that just goes to show in a lot of these locations. And if you ever go back and watch our Yorktown episode, that when a place is haunted, there are a lot of stories. And this is what we do as paranormal investigators. It is our job to delve into every possible lead and look into everything that we possibly can to prove or disprove what is happening at a certain location. Yep. And
we also need to discern the actual story from the lore and legend.
Exactly.
Because,
so you know who you're dealing with.
Right. Because that is something that until they had told us about the mob ties to Bobby Mackey's, I can say that I was unaware of that.
Yeah.
Boy, I got aware real fast.
Oh, yes, we did. So we got the opportunity last year to go to Bobby Mackey's twice. And
once in March and once in June.
Yes. And we were chomping at the bit because, we were like, holy shit, we have to go to this. Like, we are going to go. And we
booked our tickets.
No matter what, we
December,
have to get there. Yes.
In December to make sure that we got in.
Absolutely. And we made a whole trip out of it, and we hit a couple other haunted locations, but Bobby Mackey's was number one. First thing we hit on that March trip, and it was actually the last thing we hit on that June trip. And we pull up, and it's a gravel parking lot. And Blake, I think you have a picture of the building from the outside. That's what it looks like. It
doesn't look like you would expect it to look. Bobby Mackey's, no. I'm expecting this big foreboding building, and really, it's this little disheveled building. And if down in that corner on the left where that little door is, that is what leads to the infamous basement where the well resides. Now, if you go up on the right, there's the street. And I'm going to tell you that this building sits right on that road. If somebody comes around that corner on Licking Pike, they are going to, and they lose control, they're going into that building. I mean, just the stretch of the sidewalk separates you from that very busy road. So, and where we're standing to take that picture was actually the parking lot. And this is the actual backside of Bobby Mackey's. And this is what you see if you're looking at it from, if you walk, that's around in the back, you can see the little dumpster. And that little staircase, did we ever figure out where that little staircase led? Was that actually another entrance to Carl's apartment, or was that going to the attic?
I believe that was where Bobby Mackey stayed when he lived there, because him and his wife lived there on site until they didn't, after she got attacked by something she couldn't see.
Oh, yes. Let's tell that story. So Bobby Mackey, of course, he wanted a home base. He wanted to live there. And by all accounts, Bobby Mackey is a skeptic. He does not believe that anything paranormal resides in his business. And he has stated this numerous times. He has said that nothing has ever happened to him. Well, his first wife would have probably disagreed with him. Do you want to tell that story, Ryan, about the similarities?
Okay, so we know from the records, and I forgot to mention that Pearl Bryant was 5 months pregnant when she met her untimely end. Now, Bobby Mackey's wife was
first wife,
5 months pregnant, and she got pushed down the stairs by something and heard "get out" when she got pushed down the stairs, and she said it was a man that did it. And someone showed her a picture of Alonzo Walling and Scott Jackson, and she said that the man that pushed her looked exactly like Alonzo Walling. And the strange thing is, like we said, they were both, Pearl was 5 months pregnant. Bobby Mackey's wife was 5 months pregnant. Now, she ended up having the child, and I believe it was a daughter that they had. So she had her daughter prematurely, but the daughter did survive, and the daughter was happy and healthy, and I believe is living a healthy life today. But I think they moved shortly thereafter. They're like, "Hey, Carl, you stay here. We're not staying here no more."
And Bobby Mackey's wife at the time never set foot back into that building.
She refused. She did not want to go back to that building.
And I can't say I blame her. If I'm big old pregnant, something shoves me down the stairs, and I know who did it. I'm like, yeah, I ain't going back in there, especially since you can't just get a gun and shoot this dude. Yeah, no, you can't.
Now,
so, go ahead.
I will say about this building, when you get there and you're walking around, I mean, I got the chill bumps walking around the building, and I don't know. I can't say if it's because of what was in there, or if it's because like
our
holy
anticipation.
Shit, I'm at Bobby Mackey's.
Yeah.
But one thing I did notice is, so I got my K2 meter out and I'm walking around the building, and the power lines that run on the side of that road are very close to the entrance of that building, above your head. And I got my EMF detector out, and they are putting off a very high level of EMF.
Like our K2 meters were pegging to red and
Yes.
holding. And of course, when we first walk up
Absolutely.
to the door, we get up to the door, we're walking up, and as we get closer to that front railing in front, right between the street and the door, we have our meters out because, we ain't playing around. We get out of the car ready to go. And we're walking up, and we notice that our meters start pegging. I'm like, holy crap, Ryan, our meters are pegging. And we get all the way up to the door, and they are just holding it red. And I'm going, oh my God, this is at the door, Ryan. And then we start looking around. We're like, wait a minute, it should dissipate. If it's truly a spirit that's just coming up and doing it, it's rare for it to hold. There's usually something interfering with it if it just holds and holds. And it had held all the way down that sidewalk. And we're thinking, oh my God, we are in so much trouble. Look at what these things can do. And we ain't even in the building yet. No. We actually looked up and see this power line that is running over. And this thing is strong. And it could affect the K2 meters all the way around the building, even though you were 50 yards from it. It was putting off enough to affect your K2 meters. And it had a very low hum to it, which we all know, if you're in that kind of situation where you have that constant noise and that constant low hum and that constant electromagnetic energy, that actually can affect the way you think. It can give you headaches. So, and Carl stayed on the second floor, which would have been just below those power lines.
Now, and that being said, like, I mean, I got a headache standing there. I had to step away for a second. I had to step over to the car for a second. I was like, man, because we were waiting on them to open the building, and I'm just standing there, and I'm like, okay, I got to go step out of the car for a minute, because if I don't, I'm going to have a splitting headache. And I walked away, and it did dissipate. But that being said, like I said, with it putting off so much energy, that can affect the way you think and the way you feel, but that can also feed whatever entities reside within the building. And boy, did we encounter some.
So where do you want to start with this investigation? Let's start in the main floor of Bobby Mackey's. So when you walk into Bobby Mackey's, you see, of course, the sign that says, "Welcome to Bobby Mackey's." And then you see a sign that says that this property is allegedly haunted, and that the management is not responsible for the actions of ghosts or spirits while on the premises. It gives you that warning right as you go in the door. And as you walk through this little narrow hallway, you come to this beautiful open bar. I say beautiful, it's a honky-tonk bar.
Oh, hell
yeah. And you're looking at the bar, and then to your right are all these tables that lead down to the centerpiece, which is this big old mechanical bull. I so wanted to ride it, and they would not let me. I'm a real good mechanical bull rider. So that is down there. You're looking down. They have these wonderful little Bobby Mackey's tables and everything. And then just behind the bar, it opens up to a dance floor. And at the end of the dance floor is Bobby Mackey's personal stage. And you see his all of his drummer stuff. There you go, is all set up. Now, back behind that our dressing rooms. This is Bobby Mackey and his band's private dressing rooms. They would not let us go back there. Do you know how irritated I was? I'm like, what do you mean? I thought we paid for the whole building. I'm like, what do you mean? What? I'm like, can you take me back there? She goes, oh, no. Bobby Mackey does. Because you know me, I'm always going to ask whoever's in charge, would you want me back there? No, that was one place that was completely
learn that in Jefferson with you.
Yeah, I will. I'll ask you.
Can we go in here?
Would you take us? Well, if we go with you, it's okay, right? Would you take us?
Yeah.
And we were told too, Bobby does watch the cameras at that place. He constantly is watching the cameras. There are cameras everywhere, and he constantly watches those cameras. So, you know, and I mean, yeah, it sucks we couldn't get back there, but I completely understand, you know, it's their thing and you don't want to mess with their equipment and all that. So I totally get it, but it's like, dang, I wish I get, because the attic space is supposed to be like super haunted.
Super haunted. You can't get to it. You have to get through that direction. So there were a couple places that were off limits to us. One was the stage proper where all the equipment was, which I understand that. And the back dressing rooms. I was understand that. The board that ran the mechanical bull was off limits.
Yeah,
and
don't touch that.
Booth, yeah, shoot, I really wanted to too. And the lighting booth was off limits, which and behind the bar, you can get behind the bar, allegedly. So, but at the opposite end, where the band was set up, so you have the bar, and you walk back, and the band's here, and the dance floor is in the center, and then you have some more tables, and you have this little area, which is like a little private section, and that is the area when Carl had his exorcism performed. That is the area it was done in. Now, I will tell you this. We had a group and we were set up. We decided we'd set everything up right in that exorcism center. We put up a Boo Bear, K2 meters. We had a Periscope 360, the circular one where it lights up all the way around it. And we had notion balls, and there was something else, but and the Ovilus was running. Now, while we were up there, whatever was there did not want to talk to me. It did not want to talk to Ryan. There was one gentleman that was there that sat down in front of Boo Bear. And he was like, I want to talk to Carl. He goes, if Carl's here, can you talk to me? And the Boo Bear started talking. And every time he would ask a question and direct it towards Carl, the Boo Bear would answer.
Now, if you remember, when that Boo Bear would light up, we had 2 K2 meters pointed towards that Boo Bear, and those K2 meters would light up at the same time the Boo Bear would speak.
And so we asked him, we said, let's try something. Can you go and sit at the opposite end of the table? Thinking perhaps that maybe just where he was sitting with the bear, there was something electronic that could be. He went and sat at the other end of the table. And we changed his stuff. We put the Ovilus in front of him, and we put the 360 Periscope in front of him. We said, ask another question. And he goes, Carl, I want to know, are you happy now? The 360 Periscope lit up and stopped right in front of him. And then it went off. And Boo Bear at the end of the table spoke again. So I have no doubt that he was communicating with Carl, because Carl is now one of the spirits that's said to haunt Bobby Mackey's. And that he's kind of somebody who kind of takes care of people whenever they're in there. So that is, and so that's kind of the bottom layout of Bobby Mackey's. So whenever you go ahead.
I was going to say, but if you're standing there and you're looking, because you're in that little dance floor area, if you stand there and you get quiet, just stand there in the dark and get quiet, and you look towards the mechanical bull, you can see shadow figures running back and forth. And something like would dip out, like the little door to the dressing room, something would like lean out like that and then lean back in.
We're talking about that view?
So,
in that area.
Do you see where that Miller Lite sign is on the left-hand side?
Yeah.
Okay,
sorry.
Whatever, that doorway underneath that Miller Lite sign, something would like lean out and lean back into that room all the time.
Oh, that's lovely.
And down there at the back side of the mechanical bulls, at the very back of the place right there, you would see like something go. There was like a little piece. There was like something on the wall was lit up. I think it was a motion detector, or it was some sort of like part of the alarm system. Whatever was there, you would see something run across the back of that room, and it would black out that light. So
now,
there's
actually, that is something that I did not see. That was something that Ryan saw with a couple of other people. I was down hanging out at the well. You know where I was.
do you remember when I bellied up to the bar? Do you remember that?
Go ahead and tell that story. That's pretty cool.
So we had another investigator there, and they had an EVP recorder running. They had an electronic voice recorder running. And so I'm sitting at the bar and I'm trying to get a response. And I said, hey, I said, I'm sitting at the bar by myself. I said, would anybody like to come have a drink with me? You know, and so we go and play the audio back.
Yeah, I
And
walk up to him. I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm trying
I
to see
was
if
like,
anybody have a drink with me." I said, "Shit, I will. Let's have one." Yeah. He's like, "No, I'm talking to the spirit, Shelly." Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
So we go and run it back, and you just hear a male voice go, "No."
And unfortunately, that was not our evidence. It was on someone else's recorder.
Mhm.
But literally, you hear Ryan go, "Hey, would anybody like to have a drink with me?" Very nice, very kind. And you just hear, "No." Clear as a bell. It just goes, "No."
That's
Like, well,
hilarious.
fine then.
He wasn't wanting to have a drink with you, but I'm pretty sure Shelley sat there and asked him.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure
Telling
he'd
you.
have bellied right up there with her.
Yeah. Might have had a ghost buying me a drink, huh?
Never know.
That's right. So now the other really cool thing that you can do. Now you can obviously tell that this was at one point a mob run business, because to get up to Carl's apartment, there's a secret entrance. If you are walking down the hall to go into the little gift shop, which is directly across from the bar, there is this wall that has like this, that pillow looking, decor on the wall where it's just kind of like the random buttons and it's kind of fluffy and stuff, but it's made of vinyl. Okay. So think of old school vinyl, like chairs and stuff like that were in soda shops.
Like that orange or yellow, like
Yes,
neon material.
much like the design on your chair, Blake,
Mhm.
with those little like buttons in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You walk up and you pull in just the right spot, it opens up to a small, skinny staircase or a little hallway that you just have enough room to walk in and then turn, and it goes upstairs. And these stairs are frightening. They are dark, they are thin, and they are rickety. And you aren't sneaking up on anybody going up those stairs. It's like all the way up. And when you get to whenever you get to the top of the stairs, there is that door with the American flag on it that says "Go away." And you swing that door open, and you are in Carl's apartment. Well, of course, my ass like, let's go to Carl's apartment. Here I go. And everybody's like, I'm like, I'm going. And they're like, do you need a light? I'm like, no, it's stairs. You can go up them. What do you mean? What's there? Isn't like I'm in a maze. You just go up the stairs. And we get up there, and I'm going to tell you, after Carl passed away, Bobby Mackey did a very good job of trying to keep that room pretty much untouched. It's got some of Carl's old furniture in it. And it even has like old like beer cans in there that obviously they're old. They're not from, they ain't from last week. They're from several years back.
Yeah.
That are still in the sink.
There's like little shot bottle, like airplane bottles and cigarettes and stuff too that people
and
bring
that's where all of that is. And that part, Carl only had one bar stool. That bar stool's still there. And that's looking at Carl's apartment, and that picture you showed just prior. That's whenever you walk in the door, that's what you see. And you see right into that bathroom. Now I'm going to tell you something about that bathroom. I had no problem being in Carl's apartment. I had no problem at all being up there. And somebody goes, well, you need to go check out that bathroom. Okay. Thinking don't need to go, but sure, I'll go check it out. So I go walking into that bathroom, and I'm telling you, I walked into something. There is something that is, I'm not sure if it's negative or if it's just cranky. Because you walked in and it got a little hard to breathe. It felt stuffy. It felt heavy. And you got the feeling that you were not wanted in there. And I kind of backed out of there, and I kept taking pictures in that bathroom, and I would see orbs come out, but of course I couldn't catch them. And that bathroom, though, a lot of people got really weirded out even walking in there. What was your experience in that particular area, Ryan?
So me personally, I didn't have any experience in the bathroom, but in Carl's apartment, Blake, if you throw that picture back up of Carl's apartment, so on the right-hand side, do you see that board with the numbers on it?
Yeah.
Now that was for when it was a gambling den, and that's where the high rollers, like I said, that's where in Carl's apartment is where the high rollers used to play. And I got the distinct feeling that we were not welcome in that space. And we had a portal hooked up in that room. And so I'm asking questions, and I said, hey, is there anything to do with the mob going on in this room? And on the portal, I just get, fuck you. So,
I like when they're nasty like
Yeah.
that. I mean, okay.
Mhm. so because I was asking questions I shouldn't have been asking,
Now,
in
yeah,
their
and
my
you
opinion.
got and you got a lot of mob responses whenever you went up there. Now I went up. Now
Mhm.
you and I went up together later, but
Mhm.
you went up there first, and you even told me I'm getting a lot of mob responses. Go up there, ask about the mob. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay. So I get up there, and of course, the people I'm with, they don't want to ask about the mob, even though you've just told us that's how you're getting responses, and we should
Mhm.
probably follow that line of questioning. They want to ask about Carl. Now
Mhm.
there's a table there, and I didn't take a picture of it out of respect, Carl. And people leave cigarettes and little airplane bottles of booze and beers and lighters and stuff for Carl, kind of as a tribute. And everybody knows don't touch it. Just whatever's there, leave it for Carl.
Mhm.
And they started asking questions about Carl. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, I really hope Carl isn't stuck here. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to ask about Carl. And I was like, Carl, is there anybody here that you want to talk to? Our standard questions. Is there anybody here you want to talk to? You can tell me their name. And very clearly a male comes through and says, you. And I'm like, who, me? And nothing. And I go, well, you said you, so I'm talking to you. Is there a reason you don't want to talk to me now? I'm talking to you. And it goes, you broke my heart. And I was
Mhm.
like, what? I'm like, honey, I didn't know you. I couldn't have broken. I'm like, I've been accused of a lot of stuff, but baby, for my first time here. So, and Ryan, were you up there for that part? Whenever it said you, I think you
I
were.
think I was.
yeah.
I believe I was standing there.
But it
Yeah.
said it just very clearly. The spirit box said you broke my heart, and I was like, no, I think you have me confused with someone else. I didn't break your heart. I'm like, but tell me who did, and it comes through again. You did.
Mm-hmm. Clear as
And
day.
and whenever it said you did, it sounded a little bit more menacing, like they were pissed. And I'm going, oh well, isn't that interesting? Smiling away voice. So I'm like, Ryan, change the question. Start asking about the mob. Now we did ask. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just have to say, on all of our investigations that we do, it always seems to, it never fails. It's either you or it's Stacy. That's all that they ask for. It's you or freaking Stacy. Not once have I ever heard them, who do you want to speak to? And they'd be like, Ryan or Blake or John or Paula. It's always Stacy or Shelly. That's it. And it's always probably the most powerful one that's in that building that wants to speak with them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's all. Why do I always get the assholes? I'm always nice to them. But the first time it was very nice. He said, "You broke my heart," and it was very matter of fact. There wasn't a whole lot of tone in it. It was just, "You broke my heart." It was just very a statement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, you have me confused with somebody else. I didn't break your heart. And he goes, you did. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, okay. So what was the other question that we were asking out there, Ryan? We asked something to the effect of where can I place a bet, or where can I make a bet? And it said downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, hell, let's go downstairs. I know everybody wants us to get to the basement and talk about the well. Patience.
We're getting there.
So we decide we're going to trek downstairs and see if we can't make a bet. Now, this was probably the most amazing, compelling thing that I have had in a spirit box session.
Mm-hmm.
And it was caught on tape. And we don't have the tape. We don't have the video.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It unfortunately got erased.
Mm-hmm. It's in the ether now, unfortunately.
Yes.
But before, like, for a little context before we get to that piece of evidence, Blake, will you throw that picture back up of where the mechanical bull is?
Yes. Let me get to it.
Yeah. So that, when it was the Latin Quarter, was the main gambling floor for the Latin Quarter. That area right there. Now, where I believe I took that picture, and to my right is the cage where they would go and cash in their chips and get their chips. And there's a big ass safe in there, and it's like a lounge room. And this is where we caught that piece of evidence.
So you actually do have pictures of the cage, Blake. It's the one that has the records on the wall. Bobby Mackey kind of turned it into like a little green room, and it has the gold records on the wall, and it has some of those, and like his picture is in the wall on there, and a lot of the country music singers that have come through there and performed, their pictures are on the wall in there. And so we decide we're going to go into the cage, and we're running a spirit box session, and we have K2 meters going, and it's something else.
Like
Seems like
these?
there was
Sorry.
K2. Yeah. So that's actually in the cage. You have this stuff
Mhm.
up there now. That okay. So Ryan was sitting right beside that red chair, and I was pacing. And on that little red, I guess little table that's right in front of that red chair is where we set the spirit box down at. And we were rolling video on it, and we began to ask because that was where the cage was. We started our line of questioning about asking for the mob. And
Mhm.
finally, we weren't really, we were getting some answers, but we weren't getting any real direct, that we would consider actual evidence. Not, I
Mhm.
mean, and finally, I was irritated with it. And I said, listen, I said, I want to talk to whoever's in charge. I said, you get me your boss. I want to talk to your boss. And clear as a bell, it comes through. It said, I'm here.
Mhm.
And I went, good. I said, I'm talking to the main man. I said, I have a job I want you to do. I said, and I want to know how much it's going to cost me. I said, and I think you know what kind of job I'm talking about. I said, what's it going to cost me? And clear as a bell, it came through and it said 4,000.
Hand to God. I mean, it said as
What?
clear as it possibly could have. 4,000.
Shit. Wow.
And Ryan and I both, you saw how my eyes went, Ryan's right went. We both
Mhm.
looked at each other and I went, I'm thinking, okay, don't
And
get
then
excited.
you said too, I need you to do a little something extra for me too. How much is that going to cost? And what did it say?
3,000.
No, it said 6,000.
Oh, it said 6,000. That's right.
Yeah.
I said, if I wanted a little something extra done, make sure, that can't be traced back to me. How much is that going to cost me? To go 6,000.
It's clear as a damn bell.
And I
I mean,
said,
like me and you
yeah.
were sitting here talking.
Wow.
And I said to him, and so now I'm thinking, okay, are we just getting, what are the chances? Are we getting a car commercial bleed, something like that? And so I waited a second. I said, well, you know what? I don't have that kind of money. I said, is there a way you can cut me a deal? Can I get a little bit lower price? Said, can I work it off? Can I go work in the showgirls room? What can I do? Can I wait tables? Said, what would be my price if I'm willing to negotiate? And it goes 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
3 separate responses with numbers.
We actually did get a fourth. And I said, well,
Mhm.
I can't do that. I said, I guess we can't do a deal if you can't make it right. It came back through and it goes 4,000. So if I wasn't
Mhm.
willing to work in the thing, he'd going back up to 4,000.
Mhm.
And I have to tell you, the feeling that came over me. Now I knew what I was thinking in my head.
I mean, hell, it gives me the willies right now. I ain't gonna lie to you.
I knew exactly what I was thinking in my head because if you go to the boss, you need to have somebody whacked, right?
Mhm.
And in order to sell it in my head to come across as believable, I was thinking of that person. The person I had put a person in my head that I was wanting to have whacked. Never said a name, but I'll tell you. I looked at Ryan. I'm like, we got to get out of here. And he's like, okay. And I'm
Mhm.
like, we have to get out of here. And as I walked out, I'm holding my hands like this. And before I left, I said, wait a minute. I said, I just want to let you know that I don't want that done. I don't want any harm to come to that person. I've changed my mind. I said, my hands are clean. I want you to know. And I kept holding up my hands. I go, my hands are clean.
Mhm.
I'm telling you, no, call it off. And it goes, okay.
Mhm.
But that okay was not the kind of okay that made you feel like everything was okay. I was
Mhm.
like, okay.
Oh, right.
And I walked out holding my hands up because I really felt like I just put out a ghost hit on somebody.
Yeah,
And I went and found,
Shelly's like, I feel like she's like, I just feel like I did something I shouldn't have done. Like she was
yeah,
frantic about it. Like I did something I
was
shouldn't have
flipping
done.
shit.
We need to fix this. And yeah.
I went out to our ordained minister, Stacey Ortiz. She was with us on that trip.
Mhm.
And I said, I need for you to bless my hands. I need holy water, holy oil. I need for you to bless my hands and make
Had
my
her bless
hands clean.
mine
I said,
too.
because I feel like I did something I should have just done. I won't say I never wish harm. I only wish inconvenience. So I don't want anything inconvenient to happen. No harm. Never wish harm on anyone. Might wish a little inconvenience because it'd be real inconvenient if they got whacked. No, allegedly. No. But yeah, I was talking to a ghost, people. Okay, ghost. No murder for hire plot here. But I literally felt like my hands needed to be blessed because I felt like my hands were dirty. That I put my hands into something with the mob that I should not have done. I felt like I got entangled.
You felt dirty because I know I felt weird until Stacy blessed my hands as well. I felt really weird after because I remember you told Stacy I feel like I've entered a contract with something and I don't want that.
Yeah, I did. I
Wow.
felt like I'd entered a contract and it was funny because even right before we left the night, this shook me so bad because of the way I felt after it, that I was standing by myself, and I was probably inches from that curb with these cars just whizzing by. And Stacy comes over and grabs me and pulls me over. She goes, "You come here." And I went, "What?" She goes, "You're not acting right." She goes, "Come here." She started saging me. She started blessing me, putting holy oil, holy water on me, everything. And she goes, "Why are you standing that close to the road?" I'm like, "I don't know." And literally, I was so flipped out. I'm like, "I'm glad it's almost time to go. I need to get off this property." So that was crazy. We definitely got mob interaction. I completely felt like I had entered into some kind of contract. And I'm glad you remembered me saying that, because I couldn't remember if I'd said that to you or if I just thought that. Yeah, I was under.
It definitely, like, that feeling is such a weird feeling. I can't describe it to you. Dirty is the best. Even though
dirty. That was a good word. Dirty.
Even though I hadn't, like, I witnessed what happened.
You were in the room.
Yeah.
I was
You
in
were
the
a
room.
co-conspirator.
I
I was gonna
still
say
just
you're like you're a
felt,
co-conspirator or accessory.
You're guilty by
Whatever.
association.
Yeah.
it felt so weird. And like I said, I got the willies right now just thinking about it, because that's just an odd feeling.
It was odd. And then we got numbers every time, because I asked for the boss. I want to talk to the boss. I need something I need done. And I'm here. I'm like, good, let's talk. I'm tired of dealing with all the people. Oh yeah, I want to go right to the top. And in order to sell it, I thought I had to put someone in my head, and I did. And I put that person in my head. And then I was like, oh my God, I will never forgive myself. Yeah, just to elicit a response. Because if I can't convince myself in the moment when I'm saying it, how am I going to convince somebody else? So apparently it worked. Apparently I'm a little too good at that, because I was like, oh my God, I hope nothing happens to this person.
Yeah.
And I will never reveal. Ryan actually knows who that person was. And apparently, as far as we know, they are just fine. So, because I did tell Ryan who it was. I will not tell any of y'all. I did tell Ryan who it was, just in case something happened. I go, look, we got to make sure that my conscience is clear. That's who I was thinking about. But, the spookies, and I'm like, I hope that person never goes to Bobby Mackey's. They might want to, because I kept telling him, like, y'all ain't got the money. Just don't even try. I don't have the money. Don't come. I don't got no ghost coins or big, whatever that ghost currency bullshit is. I don't have none of that. So I can't pay
bucks.
you. Yeah, spooky bucks. Don't got no spooky bucks.
The boo coin.
The boo coins. Yes. So that actually, the mob responses were very strong.
And God, I wish we still had that footage.
I know.
But
I know. We do not, but I wish we did, because that was just crazy. Now, something else that's very interesting about Bobby Mackey's proper, the main floor, the bathrooms. Now, we all heard that places have haunted bathrooms, make you not want to go in, and you don't want to go tinkle by yourself. Chicks got to go in pairs, because you don't want something reaching under grab you when you're trying to get some toilet paper. Okay, no,
that is the only thing I hate about haunted locations that have a working bathroom, is going to the bathroom by myself. I hate it. Absolutely hate it.
Allegedly, the men's bathroom is more haunted than the women's.
And people have been attacking that men's bathroom. And there's a reason, because that was where the old mob boss's office was at one point, before they turned it into a bathroom. That's where his main office was.
Interestingly enough, now they have sealed it up now, but where that bathroom is now, that used to be the mob boss's office, had a staircase that went right down into the basement. Dropped down right by the well.
Of course it did.
And it's been sealed up. So that was a quick way. And they used that little staircase right there. If the law showed up, in order to get rid of the product quickly, they would shove that product down that staircase. It could be dumped into that well, and they could remove all evidence. So this staircase was frequented up and down a lot. But unfortunately, it's sealed up. So we didn't get to the well room that way. We had to go outside and walk around the building. Let's go to the well, Ryan. So you walk in. And you throw open the door, and you are met with darkness. This is a dark, dank, stinky, dirt floor basement. Now, if you look straight in, where you're first walking in the door and you look straight in, all the way down at the end of the hall, on your right-hand side, there are 3 rooms. These used to be the showgirls' dressing rooms. So that is what you look at whenever you walk in.
You walk right in.
So you see it's a dirt and gravel. There's some broken concrete in there, but that is what you see. whenever you walk in there and there, hey, there's a little light anomaly back there. Isn't that cute? So this is what you see. Now the showgirls' dressing rooms are on the right, and it is basically storage on the left. And on that left-hand side is what they call the wall of faces. If you look on that wall, pareidolia or whatever kicks in, and you begin to see faces that kind of just jump out in this wall. And if you stare at any part of it long enough, you will see a face. So, haha, lots of fun. Don't creep yourself out there. We got more to go. So if you go to the right, if you look over to the right when you first walk in, there is a window. You can look in this window, and on the other side of that window is where that well is.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead,
and that
Ryan.
window is the part of that little like room
That's
in
the
that
window
window. That's part of that old house structure that I told y'all about at the very beginning. And yeah, you look right over it, and they have that rail right there to keep people from falling into the well
and that's whenever you actually go into
it's
the
dark.
well room, because what you're seeing directly in front at the top, that's the window. Whenever you're walking in, you can look through that window and see the well. So whenever you walk in, you go to your right and you walk up this little weird kind of ramp. And if you go straight, there's one room that is dark and definitely like, I'd say 20 degrees colder in that room. You could walk in that room and you would get the chills. And there's been alleged to be a child spirit that hangs out down there. Now, again, why is there a child spirit hanging out in a dark, dank, stinky, scary basement? Makes no damn sense to me. I did not encounter any children's spirit while I was there. So, but we did investigate that room. But you whip to the right again, and there is the well. And you're looking, and the well is on your right. Yes, and that is what you see.
And you can see where Carl tore up the floorboards. That's what it looks like now. You can see where, literally just tore up the floorboards.
So standing at the entrance of that well room door, on your right is the well. In front of you is that staircase that would have led up to the mob boss's office. And to your left is this very strange little room, a brick room that is, maybe 3 feet by 4 feet at the most.
It's room that was a cell.
And it has hinges on it, but no door.
Is that it?
That is it.
That is it.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And that is about all the room that's in it is there for a chair. Now, we had an interesting experience in that well room. We decided we'd run an Estes method. And of course, they're like, yeah, Shelly, go ahead. Why don't you sit in the cell? Why the hell not? Let's sit in the cell. I sit down in the cell, blindfolded, earphones on, and it was kind of a Faraday cage running down there. Whenever you did it, did you get that there was a lot of bleed? I didn't get a lot of bleed.
There wasn't
down there.
Really. I don't think there's much cell phone service down there to begin with either, like in that little area. So
yeah, that became a point of contention. I'm like, what if we get jumped? Our phones can't ring nobody. 911, we're gonna have to run up. We'd have to make it out and run up the hill if we're getting attacked. And, it's like, okay. So doing the Estes method, and Ryan's leading it. So Ryan, what was your line of questioning there? Because I'm sitting in the cell, and first of all, I always sit on the floor. I did not sit on the chair. I always sit on the floor. You know this about me. In case I get shoved or pushed, I'm not sitting on the chair. I'm sitting on the floor. And I have to tell you, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up, and I was so cold, and I felt like at any second something was going to grab me.
I know you were wigged out the whole time.
I was wigged out the whole time I was doing the Estes method. It was obvious I was. So Ryan's asking questions.
And the main thing that I remember saying is I said, where am I standing? And she had a periscope in front of her as well, sitting on a little ledge. And that periscope lit up in front of me, pointed to me. And I'm standing to Shelly's left. She's my right, I'm her left. And she has, she don't know where I'm standing in the room. And she has, she's doing the Estes method. She has the blindfold. She has the earphones on. She goes to the left and right where that periscope was pointing at, where I was standing.
And
it
was weird because I think there was.
I always love it. I love it when they're spot on like that.
There was one lady that I believe left and decided she was going to leave at that point because she did not like that. She decided she was ready to go, and it was. I think I actually tapped out of that because I started hearing things I didn't like.
You started getting some real aggressive shit.
Very aggressive, very angry. Things like, I don't remember everything that I was getting. I do know that you guys, if it's negative or threatening or things like kill them or so, I don't say that. I don't want to inadvertently give someone a command that may be getting affected and trigger them. So I won't say that. But I did get things like kill them and I'm going to kill them and cut their throat. I did get cut their throat. So I tapped out. I'm like, yeah, I'm not liking what I hear.
It did not like I got a lot of aggressive responses directed towards me.
Yes.
When we were there, because once again, I had asked about the mob, and I'm sure whatever was there or whoever is there, it's just like, shit, he's on to us. They don't like that.
They thought he was a snitch. I think I called you a snitch in the Estes method because I was
think
like,
you
snitch.
did, if I remember correctly. Yes.
And that was one that I'm like, and I think I even said, I'm like, who the hell am I talking to? I'm like, who is this?
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes snitch. And I'm like, said snitch. Now that little staircase, if you were to go up that little staircase, of course it goes into to floor. You can't get up because so it's basically a staircase to nowhere. There was a gentleman who came on and I don't think he'll care if we say his name. We weren't going to say his last name. Corey. And Corey was standing on my left, and I was standing on the right of the staircase.
And
so there's a couple
I was standing
of little
behind Corey, and the staircase was to my left as well. So
and the way it was this little staircase. There's like two little stairs in the well room before it starts going up into that little narrow hallway that would have led up to the bathroom, which would have been the mob boss's office. Now we had been hearing creaks on that staircase. We weren't even touching it, and it sounded like somebody was on that staircase. And so we had all the lights off. We're running a spirit box session. I'm standing on one side of it, and Corey's standing on the other, and I feel something go by my arm, and it brushed me, and it was kind of out of the corner of my eye, and I looked over thinking Corey had just gone up the staircase, and I was like,
I did the same thing,
and I go, did you just go? And I asked him, I said, did you go up the staircase? And he goes, I thought you just went up the staircase. So three of us see something. I feel it brush me, go by. So what do? Take off up. You can only get 3 or 4 steps.
I mean, and not only could you see it with because I saw it, whatever it was, go up the steps, but you felt like a presence leave the room that went, how say me, you and Shelly are sitting in a room, and I've got my back to you. I don't know that you've left the room, but I can feel that you have left the room. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
That's how it was.
So whenever you go up the staircase, there's this little bitty door that goes to like this sub basement, the under basement. Now, I didn't know if we were allowed to go in there or not, but I pushed the door and it opened. So in I crawled. And it was like, whenever, Corey takes off us. Yeah, that's what you see. That's the under basement. It's nothing but dirt and broken pieces of wood and all kinds of just decay and yuck. And I'm like, this is the place for me. So whenever Corey goes running up the stairs, I see this little door. And so I like bang this door open and I go in thinking somebody screwed around and gotten past us is now in that room. There was not much room. And you had to crawl through rafters or not rafters and support beams and stuff. And I crawled through them, child. I crawled through those rafters. I walked around to the top. I'm like going, I need a tetanus shot after this. I'm sticking on nails, and there was nobody in there.
Whoever that was would have had to have come back through the entire group to get out of that basement. And no one ever did.
Nobody ever did.
I don't know who it was. It was insane. I mean, it was a person though. I know it was a solid apparition or whatever you want to call it.
It was something with enough mass that I felt it go by me, that Corey and I were on either side of the stairs, and we both thought the other had just turned to go up the stairs. And Ryan saw something go up the stairs between us, which I had actually walked up on the stairs and said, while we're in a spirit box, I'm going to sit on these stairs. Okay, nothing happened. So I said, okay, I'm going to sit here right at the bottom of the stairs. Nothing happened. I said, okay, I'll stand up. I'll stand over here. I'll let you go by if I'm blocking your way. So maybe something was
That's great. That's great because to me, when you have 3 people in the same area who see the same thing, who feel the same thing at the exact same time, I mean, that's, I don't know.
And Corey was weird. A guest. And now, shall we go ahead and address the question? Is there a demon at Bobby Mackey's?
No.
Thank you.
Not at all. I think that there is something negative there that if you fuck with it, you may have a problem. But when it comes to, is there a demon? Were there satanic rituals? No. There is a lot of death. There is a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily know about that happened there because there was a lot of illicit activity going on there that we don't know about. And I think that could it be a beacon for things in the area? Possibly.
Could the well be a portal?
Could be.
I was just
Maybe.
about to ask, could it be a portal?
Maybe. But I will tell you this. I put that K2 meter right there at the edge of that well, and never once did that K2 meter light up the entire night. Either time we went. I put an ovulus over that well. Never got a word. Now you put it over there in that jail cell. Oh, it'll talk. So again, there is a difference between paranormal entertainment and paranormal investigations. So was
Shelley,
Carl affected? Yes. Go ahead.
I just remembered something we did get on the ovulus in that basement, and I want your opinion on this.
Okay.
One of the words that came across the ovulus in that basement was elemental. Do you think that could be something that's there?
I think that is very possible. You have the water, you have a land with a history, you have a lot of ne'er-do-well and untoward things happening. You have a slaughterhouse 2 miles down the road. You have the train that goes through there constant. You have constant activity. I think it's possible, but I think it hangs around all the time. No, and generally an elemental, once it's summoned, it stays and it protects. I think that might have been more a word we were getting to scare us, but I don't know. Never once did I walk into something that made me throw up. That's kind of how I discern if there's something really nasty there.
We know what that means for you.
Yeah, that means that there is something extremely negative and usually violent, usually very nasty, and usually not necessarily something you want to mess with. The only time I ever felt even remotely ill was in that casino room, that cage.
Now, we did have a girl. We were doing the human pendulum experiment.
Yes.
Down there by the showgirls' rooms. Was that before or after we saw that thing run across?
Actually, we had seen the thing run across, which was why when we decided to do the experiment of the human pendulum. Now, if you don't know what that is, put on earphones and blindfold, a lot like the Estes method. But you have that person stand up. And as they're standing, you have spotters on all, one in front, one in back, and one on either side. And you ask the spirit to show them yes or no. And usually that person, they could lean forward or back. They could lean side to side. They could do hand motions. And trust me, they will be unaware of what they're doing. And you ask yes and no questions. Now, we had one person that had done it, no problem at all. And again, this was after we saw something run across that back, and we were trying to figure out where to do this.
The best way to describe it was a black mass went across the end of the basement. When you're looking down there by the showgirls' rooms, something black ran across, like solid black.
Yes.
Like blacker than that black, like black enough to where it stood out against the darkness.
Oh, yeah. No,
and it shot across and ran into the farthest back room that was back there. So we decided we'd get in that hallway because obviously if there's something in that hallway, maybe we'll be able to get it to answer us. And the first girl that hopped up to do it, she did just fine. No problems, no issues. Then we had a lady that got up to do it, and she got very unnerved. She'd been going for about a minute and a half, and she got very unnerved. And as soon as she took it off, we decided to pull her kind of quick. And her husband was there. And she looked at him. She says, we have to go. We have to go. We have to leave right now. We have to leave right now. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, we'll take you out. And she goes, we have to be saged. We have to get saged. And I'm like, would you like me to sage you? She goes, no. She says, no. She said, we have sage. We're going to sage ourselves. We know what, we have our own stuff. We want to do our own, which I completely understand. You're comfortable with your own items. If that's the way you want to do it, great. Now, later on, she had sent me a picture that whenever they got in the car, after they saged and everything, they were driving home, she had a scratch on her neck that had shown up. Then we had this sweet little younger girl that had gotten up there. And I'm not going to say her last name. I'm going to say her first name because it's easier to talk, let's call her Carly. And so Carly gets up to do it. And she no sooner, she puts on the blindfold, and she was had a little bit of trepidation about putting on the blindfold. And we're like, okay, if you don't want to put it on, you don't have to. It's okay.
She was very interested in everything all night long, but she was also very trepidatious about everything because of all the lore and legend that she had heard. So she was a little unnerved. She was a little unnerved, but she was a trooper.
She was a gamer. She was
killer. I really enjoyed her.
So she puts on the blindfold, and she puts on the headphones to start doing this human pendulum. And her fists clench up, and she starts to shake, and it looks as if she's starting to have a seizure. She is shaking that violently, just back and forth. And we're like, no, 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 no. Less than 10 seconds. And she starts to shake as if something has a hold of her. And we go, you've seen us. We got her ripping off the headphones, ripping off the mask. Where she begins to cry. And she is crying. And I'm like, we got to get her out. And Ryan's like, I'll take her out. So Ryan, you walked her out. And I'm like, do you need me? You're like, I got her. And Ryan walks her out. So what was the conversation? I mean, I know you've told me, but tell them, what was the conversation as you were walking out?
She just said that she just got overwhelmed, like an overwhelming feeling. And
it was
a bad feeling, and she couldn't shake it. And she wanted to do the experiment, and she was still kind of bummed that she had to pull out as quickly as she did, but she just had to get out of that basement. And I took her outside, and she grounded herself, and she just I was like, take deep breaths. And I kind of talked her through everything and got her kind of back to being herself. And, she was just as sweet as she could possibly be, and I just felt so bad that she was affected that badly.
And she was affected almost instantaneously. That was probably one of the quickest that had such a violent physical reaction. It was almost like it was waiting for her. That perhaps whatever was there seemed to think that she was vulnerable to pretty much be messed with. And
that's a striking similarity to an investigation that we went to at Hill House Manor with another paranormal team.
Yes.
Where a person, immediately the moment they put the thing on, we pretty much come to the conclusion that
they would jump the second they had it on.
That wow.
So, I told you that we have seen that before. People get affected as soon as it gets on. Now, and we say that she was upset that she had to pull out of it. She didn't have a choice. We were taking her out of that experiment. The second I was like, okay. And we watched her fist ball up, and then it was just this shake. And I really thought she was having a seizure or going into convulsions.
Yeah. She was convulsing.
It was get her out now. So, and then there was one more that, and this was a couple, and this was our friend Charlie. And Charlie and Charlie's significant other were, had decided they were going to go into the well room. And they went into the well room and kind of investigating. They're gamers, they know what's going on.
Oh yeah, they're killer. I love them too.
And kind of towards the end of the night, they were like, yeah, we need to go. And it wasn't like they were leaving like really early, but they still like 45 minutes left or so. And it was just odd. It was like this sudden decision to go. Excuse me. And so we're asking, hey, is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, we feel like we need to go. And we're like, okay, would you like us to sage you or anything like that? And they're like, no, we have our own sage. We brought our own sage. And they sage each other in the parking lot before they left. Now, again, you kind of, okay, well, you're saging yourself on the property. You're still technically in the parking lot. I would have,
For people who don't know, you need to, when you leave a building, whatever your ritual is, be it prayer, be it sage, whatever it is that you do in order to cleanse yourself before you leave a location, you need to make sure that you're standing on the grass, on the ground, something like that can absorb that energy that's coming off of you. Because if you're standing in a parking lot or on concrete or on gravel,
reflect back
it's going to reflect, and it's going to, So you have got to at least make sure that you're on a piece of ground that has grass or just plain dirt or something of that nature.
Right. Now, in the days that followed, I began to get messages from Charlie saying something followed me home, something attached to me. And Charlie has, ever since he went, has randomly checked in with me and told me some of the things that have been happening. And Charlie believes it all stemmed from going to Bobby Mackey's, to the point where Charlie wants to go back and take it back. Take back whatever it is that attached itself. Yes.
I'd actually just seen him say something about that the other day. So that's
So did we come home with anything? I think fortunately not. As far as, is there a demon
Not
at
from
Bobby?
there.
Not from there.
Sorry.
And as far as I know, the ghosty mobsters did not take me up on my offer because I never came through with the cash. So, but do I think there's a demon there? No.
I mean, before I left, I even like made it clear that, hey, no disrespect. I did not mean any disrespect to you guys. I'm just curious. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. You got to stay here. Thank you for your time. I'm leaving.
And I went, listen, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
No, I
His
didn't.
favorite line. No, just kidding.
But yeah, is like, I don't, some people would have you believe that the devil himself walks around in Bobby Mackey's late at night. And that is not the case. Not at all.
So.
Not at all. Like I said, is there something nasty?
Very nasty.
Is there something
very nasty,
not to be trifled with? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But it is not what some people would have you believe that it is.
It is my professional paranormal investigative opinion that there is definitely the spirits of the mobsters there.
And that is what it is.
And I believe that the spirit of Carl is there. I really do. Just from some of the things that we got. And I do believe that you have random showgirls, because there were conversations carried on with showgirls with K2 meters in the showgirls dressing rooms. I do not believe there's a demon there.
No.
I do believe Carl was affected by something. I do believe that.
Do you I kind of slightly threw this question out to both of y'all the other day when we were kind of talking about Bobby Mackey's, but do you think that whatever is there that's negative or nasty had enough influence over Carl to possibly have him dig up the well to open something up?
If you're exposed
definitely
to something like that every single day, like I said,
Yeah.
I like to go to the zoo. I don't want to live there. I have no idea what would happen if you live in a location every day where you can be affected by it. And you are affected whenever you walk onto that property. You can feel that there's something there. That's no joke. You can feel it. So yeah, I think absolutely, if you're in something like that, you can be affected by it if you're there every single day, day in, day out, and you live with it. Yeah.
Well, if we think that the well could possibly be a portal, it's not a portal to hell, but a portal nonetheless, it's entirely possible that, they did have Carl dig up that well, because that would also do nothing but feed the energy in the building and would have helped them manifest more. So you have not only that, like we talked about, you have that well, you have the power lines out front, you have the train coming by, and you're sitting right there on the river.
You have such
an energy vortex.
Yeah.
And you have that highway that is very busy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I was going to say. You just have that convergence of all different kinds of energy right there on one spot.
Now, what I will say is, what I was kind of like expounding upon what I was saying earlier, I do think that area or that location could be a beacon for potential things in that area.
I would agree with that.
And the reason I say that is because I did come across a story in my research that said there was a car accident out in front of Bobby Mackey's. And there was a cop who pulled over to help the people in the car accident. And he said that a woman came running out the front door with a sheet to wrap around the person who had gotten hurt. So a few days later, he called Bobby Mackey and was like, hey, I want to know who this woman is who came out of your establishment with this sheet to help me. And Bobby Mackey said, well, what day was it and what time? And he told him, he said, there was nobody at that club at that time. Nobody. And we didn't have a woman matching her description working on the staff. So that could be someone who was in the area, and that's where they reside now. I have come across cases where there was a location that was extremely haunted, and through investigation and through research, they found that some of the spirits that were there were from a house that was 2 miles up the road that burned down at one point. And maybe they see this as, hey, there are more people like me who were here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go there.
And I think with all the energy that is available there, I mean, if you have transient spirits, why not? I mean,
and at one point it was a hotel too. So That's funny that you know some nefarious stuff went on in those hotels too.
Mhm.
So there could have been some people. Yeah.
I'm like, our ears always perk up when we hear hotel and brothel. We're like, brr, what?
We're like, hello. So anyway, that kind of is the summation of our trip to Bobby Mackey's. Both times we kind of mashed the two together. That it's an interesting place to visit. It's interesting to go to. I think that you will enjoy investigating there.
Absolutely.
Go into it with an open mind in the sense, and don't go in yelling for Johanna. Johanna does not exist. We asked Johanna thousands of times and never once got an answer.
Well, there were somebody that was in my group that would not stop asking about Johanna, and I could not get them to stop, even though they were told several times, hey.
Didn't the spirit box tell them to shut up?
I believe at one point it did. And they were like, hey, you were told that doesn't exist, and they kept trying that line of questioning and kept trying to.
I feel Johanna. No, the hell you don't.
They tried to step over some other people who were really investigating questions, and tried to be really loud and be really obnoxious and continue to ask about Johanna. And I believe they actually ended up climbing down into the well like a couple of goobers, and you don't want to do that. That like I said, that is a place that is not to be trifled with.
Yeah, don't play with that place, because I think it does have some energy, and I think that, and I really think it's the mob bosses that are there. Some very nasty, determined, and definitely motivated to keep their secrets.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're. Go ahead.
Paranormal investigation tip number 2: if it's restricted and blocked off, don't go in there.
Don't do that. Don't do that, because you ruin it for everybody else. Just don't do that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Johanna's a good story, a very good
story, but it's just that.
That's all it is. It's a story.
Exactly.
But there's plenty of other things to keep you occupied there if you decide to go.
Yes, there is.
And do go. It is so cool, and it's cool that they're so cool about having people come in and investigate, because there's not a lot of places that are as cool as they are about it. And I highly recommend it. Go. You'll have a great time.
We hope you do. But we also hope that you've enjoyed what we brought to you tonight. Please remember, we are on all types of different social media. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. We have launched a new webpage that Shelly is going to lovingly tell you about.
That is Patreon. Oh my gosh. If you are not on this, child, just for our pre-broadcast alone tonight, you get to see my underwear. If you're a Patreon member, hey, take that. Go to Patreon. Purchase a tier. The more higher tier you go, the more you get to see. And then there's also another way that you can reach us and help us to grow. And Ryan will tell you about that. How do you do that, Ryan?
Go on Apple Music, rate us, review us, because the more you rate us and the more you review us, the higher this podcast goes, and the more eyes and ears it gets on it, and the more we can bring you, and the more places we can go to get great content that, we love catching for you guys, and we know you guys love watching it. Go on our YouTube page, comment, boost us, share our page on Facebook, share our page on any platform that you possibly can. Get more eyes and ears on us, and it'll only benefit you as well as us.
And if you get on Patreon, you can find out where Ryan is willing to get a tattoo for money. So for my friends, I am Shelly Pruitt. This is Blake Smith, and that is Ryan Roberts. Thank you so much for watching Everything Vaguely Paranormal, and we will see you next Tuesday.
Bye, y'all.